I've been doing a little poking.
Did you see it? Here, I'll play it one more time.
I've been doing a little poking.
Right there, 23 minutes and 45 seconds into the film, our detective knows who's guilty. Okay, but nobody recognizes that look the first time they watch the movie, so the audience is still in the dark, right? Well, give it 15 minutes, and we all know exactly what has happened to Harlan Thrombey. Most murder mysteries and whodunits hide the truth until the very end. Knives Out subverts that trope entirely, doing something even stranger. It shows us the crime, tells us exactly what happened, and then quietly waits for us to misunderstand it. Makes us believe we've already found the answer. But the real mystery was never who killed Harlan Thrombey. It was never even if Marta would get caught. The real mystery, the one Johnson hides inside the one he shows you, is this. Why are we rooting for her? Think about where you are at the 40-minute mark. You've just watched the flashback. You know what Marta did. You've seen the vials on the floor, the wrong label, the Naxo stuff she can't find. You've watched Harlan hold her hand and tell her to think of her mother. You've watched him pick up the knife. Case closed. But if you're anything like us, you want her to get away with it, and you are desperate for her to get away with it. Johnson did that to us on purpose, and he did it in the first 11 seconds of Marta's screen time, before the manor, before Blanc, before any of it. Her apartment in South Boston, her mom, her sister on the couch watching CSI, 11 seconds of a real life before the Gothic house swallows her whole. That's the move. That's when he got us.
Because the Thrombey estate is a game board, and everyone on it is playing. Richard plays, Walt plays, Joni plays, Ransom was born running a con. Even Harlan, in his final 8 minutes alive, sat down and plotted, turned his own death into the most interesting story he'd ever had. But Marta doesn't play. She can't play. Literally, her body won't let her. Every time she lies, she vomits. You've seen Pinocchio, same energy, except instead of a nose, it's her guts on the floor. It's rather gruesome and a tad disturbing. She is the only person in that house not running a game. And so when the machine turns on her, when Walt shows up at her apartment threatening her mother's immigration status, when the note arrives reading, "I know what you did," you don't just sympathize with her. You panic with her. Rian Johnson makes you forget you're watching a suspect. He makes you feel like you're watching a victim. And that feeling, that switch that happened without you noticing, that's the real mystery Knives Out was solving all along. So let's talk about the Thrombeys, and this so-called game we've been referring to. The Thrombeys aren't your typical upper-class family. It consists of a patriarch, Christopher Plummer's character Harlan, and a slew of family members all vying for his attention, for his wealth. Essentially, playing the game, learning to communicate using Harlan's language, it's just sucking up to the boss. Lying, offering two-faced comments of praise and admiration, it's all second nature for these people. I mean, let's take a look at what they're actually hiding in these interviews. Richard, the husband of Harlan's eldest daughter, Linda, starts his interview with admiration for his father-in-law, but then proceeds to lie and deflect questions revolving their last conversation, where we learn about the affair. Walt, Harlan's youngest, is covering up the fact that Harlan fired him from the publishing company. And Joni has been double-dipping tuition payments for years. These aren't crimes of passion. These are maintenance lies, everyday deceptions, kept warm, kept ready, pulled out whenever needed. The Thrombeys don't lie because they're scared. They lie because it's a family trait. And Harlan wrote mystery novels for 50 years. He built a fortune on manufactured deception. He understood motive, red herrings, the architecture of a good twist better than anyone in that house. So when Marta stands in his study, having just accidentally given a lethal dose of morphine, Harlan Thrombey does the most Harlan Thrombey thing possible. He turns it into a story. This is the scene that unlocks the entire film. Pay attention to not to what he's saying, but to his face. He is calm. He is precise. He is in some terrible and beautiful way enjoying this. He maps out Martha's escape route with the focus of a man who has been waiting his whole life for a plot problem this good. Drive past the elephant marker, walk the side path, the dogs know you, trellis, trick window behind the painting, and then he cuts his own throat. Because the game, for Harlan, was always bigger than survival. Now here's what makes Marta so extraordinary as a character, and why Ana de Armas deserved every award attention she got. She is a walking impossibility inside this story. The vomit thing? Everyone laughs at the vomit thing. It's quirky. It's funny. It's this weird little character trait that gets introduced and then keeps paying off. But it is doing something profound. In a genre built entirely on concealment, where every character is hiding something, where deception is the engine of the plot, Johnson gives us a protagonist whose body physically refuses to participate. Watch Blanc do it deliberately in that scene. He already suspects Richard's affair. He asks Marta about it, not because he needs confirmation, but because he wants to see her. And she tries. You can see her try, and her throat gives away before a single word comes out. He smiles. He's just found the only honest person in the building. Here's what that means for the story. Every other character uses language as a tool to protect, to deflect, to win. Marta has none of that. She has to navigate a house full of people running games, armed only with fragments of truth. Harlan even coached her on this. Use only the truth parts, fragments, don't lie, just don't complete the picture. She is Pinocchio, but inverted. Pinocchio wanted to be a real boy and kept lying anyway. Marta is painfully, brutally, humiliatingly real, and she's surrounded by puppets who've forgotten they have strings.
Let's talk about Benoit Blanc, because he is one of the strangest detectives ever put on screen, and I don't mean the accent. Although the accent...
Donut hole in a donut's hole. But we must look a little closer.
Daniel Craig spent 2 to 3 hours a day with a dialect coach for this role. He studied Tennessee Williams. He watched C-SPAN footage of Shelby Foote. He committed to this ridiculous, magnificent, fully loaded Southern gentleman the same way he committed to Bond, with total conviction, just aimed somewhere completely different. And it works, because Blanc is not a joke. He's genuinely the smartest person in any room he enters. He just also sounds like he's narrating a KFC commercial. But here's the thing about what Blanc actually does in this movie. He follows Marta, scene by scene, move by move. The whole investigation is him trailing her. He invites her to search the grounds with him, the only person, he says, with nothing to gain. And then he watches her. He watches her mess up the security cam footage and blow up the device. He watches her step deliberately through her own footprints by the gate, destroying the evidence. In the final summation, the big library scene, the moment the whole film has been building towards, Blanc doesn't reveal anything Marta doesn't already know. He reveals what Ransom did. He shows her she never killed anyone, and then he gives her permission to stop running. He doesn't save her. He witnesses her. And in a genre that has spent 100 years centering the genius detective as the hero, that is so quiet and so radical and so completely intentional that you might miss it entirely.
Okay, we need to talk about Ransom. Specifically, we need to talk about that sweater. Chris Evans, Captain America, the man who spent a decade being the moral spine of the Marvel Universe. Johnson cast him as the villain. Not just any villain, a villain who wears a cream-colored Aran knit, so soft and cozy and unthreatening that the internet genuinely lost its mind over it. The film's Twitter account renamed itself Chris Evans Sweater Stan account. People wanted to buy the sweater. And that is exactly the trap. A turtleneck villain looks like a villain. A cable knit villain looks like your friend's older brother at Thanksgiving. The countercasting is the weapon. You don't suspect Ransom because you like Chris Evans. The decade of cultural trust you've built up watching him play heroes. Johnson takes that and uses it directly against you. Ransom can be charming and funny and surprisingly helpful to Marta in the diner scene. And some part of your brain is whispering, he's Chris Evans. He's probably fine. He is not fine. He returned to that house the night of the party, climbed the trellis, switched the vials, and took the Naxos stuff with him. He didn't just try to frame Marta. He engineered a situation where she would kill Harlan herself, without knowing it, and then be destroyed by the Slayer rule. He tried to turn Marta into his murder weapon, and he almost pulled it off, all in that sweater.
Here's the moment that is the real test this movie runs on the audience. Not the reveal, not the summation, the will reading.
I, Harlan Thrombey, being of sound mind and body, I hereby direct that all my assets, both liquid and otherwise, I leave in their entirety to Marta Cabrera.
Alan, the attorney, opens the envelope, reads Harlan's statement. Accept without bitterness, it's for the best. And then, everything goes to Marta Cabrera. The house, $60 million, the publishing company, all of it. The family explodes. Linda accuses manipulation. The room spins, and us, sitting there watching this, are forced to confront a question the movie has been quietly building towards for an hour. Is that okay? She caused the death, even accidentally, and she gets the inheritance? Is that what we want? Because by that point, you've been rooting for her so hard, you don't want to examine it too closely. You just want her to get out of that room, so you let the question slide. You keep rooting. But notice what the family does next. They don't just contest the will. They reach for weapons. Walt threatens Marta's mother's immigration status, and then tries to leverage her guilt, her fear, her love for her family against her. They wrap it in reasonableness. We just want what's fair. We just want what Harlan would have wanted. But underneath it is the bedrock assumption that the money belongs to them. That wealth has a kind of gravity, that it should flow back toward people who already have it. And Marta, who can't lie, who has no game to play, who was just standing there with this inheritance she never asked for, she has to figure out how to survive people who have been playing this game their entire lives. Last shot. Marta on the balcony of the Thrombey estate. The whole family on the driveway below, looking up at her. A mug in her hand that says, "My house." She doesn't gloat, doesn't make a speech, doesn't do anything except stand there and look down. And the film ends. We keep coming back to this image. Why this shot? Why Johnson ends here on this with nothing else said? Because the whole movie has been about who gets to stand where. The very first time Marta arrives at the estate, Meg has to identify her to the cop at the door. She is Harlan's nurse, part of the family, yet she still needs to be vouched for to enter a house she's been coming to for years. That's the first 10 seconds of her at that estate. Someone else explaining who she is, justifying her presence, before she can walk through the door. and in the last shot, she's looking down at all of them. The game is over. The house belongs to the person who never wanted to play.
Knives Out made $312 million worldwide, got Rian Johnson an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay, launched a franchise worth nearly $500 million. It beat every franchise, every sequel, every safe bet at the box office that Thanksgiving weekend in 2019. But here's what I think it actually did. It made every person who watched it, just for a moment, just long enough to feel it, into a Thrombey. You walked in with assumptions you didn't know you had, about whose story this was, about who the protagonist would be, about who, standing in a room full of wealthy people in a Gothic manor, was supposed to be there. And then Marta walked into that apartment in South Boston with her mom and her sister and the TV on, and Johnson took those assumptions and he used them. Against you. For you. On you. The murder mystery was the decoy. The mirror was the movie. And the knife? The actual knife, the one in the title, the one that matters, was pointed at the audience the whole time.